Okay, I've got my knit fabric here. I'm going to use this grid on my board to talk about stretch and recovery. So typical is you want to map out like 4 inches. Now stretch has, it's either a one-way stretch or a two-way. So you're super lucky if you have a two-way stretch. So we've got, these are our warp yarns that run vertical on, is that my vertical? Here we go. So you've got warp and filling yarns. So along with your selvage, typically is going to be your warp yarns, and then filling is going to run cross grain. So to measure your stretch, I'm going to measure my warp first, and then measure out 4 inches. I just like to put pins in here because it makes it clear where you came from, because like I said, we're measuring not only the stretch, but we're going to measure the recovery. So there's my 4 inches. So you can see I start here. You want to hold this in place. So we've got every 1/4 inch marked here. So this is going to tell us, like, do we have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50% stretch? So let's see. You don't want to overstretch it. So just stretch it to a good maximum, but don't force it. Okay, cool. So you can see there I've got 40% stretch, and it recovers nicely, almost right back to the 4 inch mark where we started. Let's make a note of that. Okay, now let's check out the cross grain, which is typically where you have more of the stretch anyway. So again, place a little fold right on the cross grain. We're going to check the stretch for our filling yarns. So again, let's put pins in here and mark out 4 inches. Okay, see how far this baby goes. See, that's pretty comfortable. What is that, 6? Almost recovers back. And a lot of this too will come out in the wash. So every time you wash a knit garment, it shrinks. So we've got 60%, which is a heck of a lot, on the cross grain. So this tells us how we're then going to manipulate these pieces to be able to make a piece out of this exact material. Okay, so of course there's math to everything. So for knits, you always want to raise up necklines, armholes, sleeves, like you just want to push it up. And then the other thing is you want to take it in. So shrink it in, because your knits, they're gonna stretch and recover. So when you have this much stretch, you kind of want to take in to this percentage. So your fit will account for, the fabric will account for the fit to be the same as a woven bodice here. So standard measurements that you always want to take in is about 1/4 inch. But since I have 40% here, I'm going to do some math with you guys. So I like to slide some stuff over. I'm going to just write notes here. So for 1/4 inch would be for anything that's 18 to 25% stretch. But we want to add 1/8 for every increment up. So just think of quarters. So we've got 25 to 50, 50 to 75, 75 to 100, and onward. So we want to add 1/8 for each. So here we're going to do 3/8 inch. If we have 50 to 75, which we hit 60, we're going to have 1/2 inch, which I love because that really just means you're taking off your seam allowance for any commercial pattern that you could be working with. But let's pull these back over. So I know I've said we're going to take it in this much, so that's going to accommodate for the 60. But we also need to think about the change here. So I do have a 2-way stretch, so I've got 40, stretch with my lengthwise grain. And that's gonna put us 3/8 inch change this way and a 1/2 inch change horizontally. So I'm gonna start with the neck. The neck, I will say, I kind of, I'm a little bit particular about this. 3/8 is a lot to change your neck, even for a 40% stretch. Let's just get these out of the way. And take this down. So I'm going to only shift the neck up. I'm speaking in terms of full-size sloper, so 1/4 inch. Make a little note here. I'm gonna leave my shoulder as is, but as, like I said before, we wanna shift most everything up. So we've shifted the neck up, we wanna shift up our armhole. This I kind of just do standard, so standard is always gonna be a 1/2 inch. And then that will reshape to your shoulder point. Okay, then we want to push it in. So we're in that 50 to 75% range. So for a true garment, I'd be pushing this in by a 1/2 inch. Make sure that armhole's squared. And again, like I said, everything up. So I'm gonna shift this up by a 40% range, which is 3/8 of an inch. And there is your Dartless sloper for stretch knits. So let me outline what we're gonna keep here. So what this becomes. Okay, so there's front. We're gonna do the same to back. Okay, so the back, to be honest, I don't ever touch the neckline. It's usually always less than an inch. If it's something drastic, then I'll shift it up, but if it's just kind of standard, I don't touch it. So you can leave this point alone. But again, we wanna shift the armhole up, and remember that's that standard kind of 1/2 inch point. And based off our percentage, we want to shift the bottom up by 3/8. And then we're going to shift our side body in by that 1/2 inch to cater to the 60% stretch we've got here. And then we're just going to reshape everything. Centers, leave them alone. And we're gonna smooth and blend to here for that sleeve, the armhole. Oops, that didn't even take. Okay. Okay, so we've got our new front and back to work with the material I just showed. And then sleeve. Let's go ahead and adjust this. And I always adjust using my full-size sloper, so even if I don't intend to do a long sleeve with the design, I'm gonna adjust this first. So same rules, I'm gonna leave my sleeve cap alone, so this is gonna remain as it is. But same as we pushed these armholes up by a 1/2, and again, just remember that's standard. I know it ties back into our stretch on the cross grain, but this is just kind of a standard thing to do with knits. Because you don't want a saggy armhole. And armholes, crotch points. So even crotch point on a pant, 1/2 inch standard, just so nothing's like feeling like it's sagging too low or uncomfortable chafing. Actually, let's move this in first. So same rule of thumb coming in, so I'm gonna move this in that 1/2 inch. Goes with our crosswise stretch. And then same thing we did to the bottom bodice here, we want to bring this length up. And your undersleeve length will then remain the same measurement because we're moving the armhole up and we're going to move this up that same amount. So let's scooch that. Cool. Now we have our Dartless knit slopers, so we can begin working on our design.